start popping your name up in the chat box. It will record it. So hope your week's going well so far and getting ready for 4th of July weekend. So it's coming up. A lot of you guys are probably making family plans for that. So tonight, what I'm going to do is kind of go back and review. Seemed like we had several questions last week leading up to the assignment. A couple of you guys asked, hey, are you going to go back over, kind of review some things off the syllabus or rubrics so we know we're on the right track? So I'm going to spend some time doing that, the first part of class. And then I'm going to, right before we get off here, I'm going to just kind of briefly talk to you a few minutes about CBMs. And if you remember the very first night of class, I mentioned there was going to be 1 week in this 8-week course where literally you were getting ready to finalize in a report, and I was going to already go ahead and start talking about something else to kind of get you thinking about it because we need to collect several data points, and this is kind of that week. So I'm going to review some things from norm reference, kind of go over expectations of the assignment, show you where some samples are to give you ideas, and then I'll jump over to CBM. So, and then we'll try to get you off here a little early since we got a holiday week. So I'm going to do a screen share. Bear with me just a minute. First thing I'm going to show you on my screen share is I've got the syllabus pulled up for this week, kind of a breakdown, the points, kind of what we're going to be looking for. You guys should be able to see my screen now. Can everybody see it? Okay, I always like to ask. I just a lot of times assume and just move on, and everybody's got a real strange look. So, okay, so a lot of the sections in the report are going to be basically the same sections you used last week. Really, not anything new as far as the sections we're going to address. You're going to have your identifying information. You're going to name the specific norm reference test. Okay, I think Kim's using the WISC through her school with her case study. So all these are going to be different. Everybody's going to have something a little different. Just make sure you name the test. Talk a little bit about when it was administered. Okay. One of the comments or questions last week, in the response I gave was just try to make sure it's not more than 1 year old. Okay. So if you have a case study student that it was they were reevaluated using the norm reference test and it was back in October of 24, just make sure you state the date, October, whatever the date was, 2024. What skills were measured on the norm reference test? Okay. A lot of them are going to measure academic and cognitive skills overall. Okay. And it breaks it down to all the subtests. Purpose of the test. Okay. Was it for reevaluation? Was it for determine eligibility? What was really the purpose of the test being administered to the student, and why was that test selected? Okay. So depending on your case study student, everybody's going to have a little bit reason why the test was selected. Okay, background. We'll jump down now into the background. If you are using the same case study student, you can literally copy the background section off of your informal assessment report and drop it right in here. You don't have to recreate this if it's the same student. Okay. If you're having to use a different student or you're having to use my testing video, you'll just pull the information off the comprehensive report that I provided. Student's name was pseudonym. It's Caden Gripe. A lot of people just put KG. It has his age, everything. You can just use that information. Okay, make sure you including teacher observation information, pertinent family information, anything else that might be relative to the student's background. So, and I'll show you the background report off of mine that I did. Okay, so again, same, nothing's changed. Okay, from the informal. Test results and interpretation. This section does change a little bit from what you did in informal. Okay, slightly. You're going to present your data in a visual representation, a table, chart, or graph. You guys did that in the informal. You're going to kind of do an analysis of the results. referencing those tables. Figure 1, in Figure 1, you'll see Johnny Joe scored at the 50th percentile on a math subtest, just explaining it, okay? The one difference or the one thing we're going to add this time is because it's norm referenced, right? And normed, we compare that to a large group of students. That's how it's normed, okay? So in the test results and interpretation section, we're going to compare or explain that student, your case study student's performance in comparison to his peers using a bell curve. Okay, so let's say Kim has identified two low areas off of that list that she wants to write this report on. And on the bell curve, she's simply going to put or indicate on the bell curve where they scored. If they scored at the 75th percentile, she would put an X on the bell curve or identify it somewhere. And then another subtest, if they scored 103 on a subtest, she would indicate that on a bell curve. And so she's showing both areas that she pinpointed or pulled out of her data to write the report on. Okay. So always say find 2 to 3 what you feel like are areas that need to be addressed, weak areas for that student. Okay. I will show you again in just a few minutes where that bell curve tool is that I introduced or showed you last week. You guys feel free to use it. It's in a Google tool, so you can go in and edit it and do whatever you need to do to make it fit your need. You can type in the subtest you use and then put the score and it will graph it on there for you. Okay.
Okay, yeah, that's what I was going to ask is if it was live, like if we changed the
Yeah,
score,
it's live.
if it would
And
change
then,
the bell curve and stuff. Okay.
yeah, it will. And it'll have a, bar graph underneath it that's color coded. So for the low, if it's a low score below 70, it's going to be in red. Then over 70 up to like 85 is going to be yellow. And then from 85 and above, it'll be green. But I will show you what that looks like again in just a few minutes for you. Okay. Next thing we're going to do is just support all conclusions with data using data from the assessment. So any conclusions you're coming up with based on what you're seeing. So this is kind of where you are determining or explaining what you think is the area that's weak, that needs attention. You're going to highlight what you felt like are some strengths based on the data and what you felt like are weaknesses. Johnny Joe's strengths indicate does well in reading comprehension, reading fluency, but areas needed for improvement are math facts fluency and calculation. Those are strengths and weaknesses. Okay. Which you pretty much did that in the informal. Next one is you're going to have the summary and conclusion. You're basically just going to tie key findings with the background of the student. So you already know a little bit about the background. Just identify some of your key findings. Um, Again, to use the example for Kim, student maybe was low in math calculation and math fluency, but had strengths in reading comprehension, reading fluency, which is reflective upon informal assessment observation and daily observations in the classroom. So I'm taking what previously was observed and I'm tying it into these results and they correlate basically. And basically just give a little overall summary of their performance. Okay. Next one is the recommendation and conclusion section. Basically, you're just outlining screening and evaluation decisions reports. So this is where you're just making recommendation based off the scores that you saw. So if the weak areas were reading fluency, reading comprehension, then you're going to make some instructional recommendations uh, based on that, and then kind of highlight some planning and instructional recommendations. What would you do different? Would you modify the content moving forward? Would you change the grade level material? Do you feel like what he's working on now is too difficult and challenging for him to be successful? So I need to drop it back from fifth grade, perhaps down to the beginning fourth grade level to ensure some success. Okay. And then you'll just, based off the data you get, you'll fill out the lesson plan template. Again, guys, just keep it very basic based off the information you're seeing from the norm reference. I don't need it to end up being 10 or 12 pages long. Just show me, basically, and these were some questions last week, just basically on this lesson plan template. I'm just looking for, can you show me that you can look at test data results, identify what you feel like are some weak areas, and then use that to develop a lesson to address that. You can be straight to the point. You don't have to elaborate a lot on that. Just that's what I'm looking for in that lesson plan. I know you guys mentioned a couple of your other classes, they were wanting something that was very extensive and lengthy. I'm not looking for that. I want to know, can you look at the results, make a decision on what you need to do moving forward to help that student, and then just fill out that lesson plan template form and give me the basic information on a lesson you would develop to help that student. Okay? Don't go overkill on it. All right. Is there any questions on that? I just kind of want to go with a breakdown, give some explanation, see if anybody has questions on that. Again, these sections really aren't any different than what you had on the informal, other than I'm just asking you to include that bell curve. Okay. Before I,
I
I
have
had
a
a
small
question.
question.
okay. All right, go
Dr.
ahead.
Posey, when we're doing the strengths,
Yep.
um I'm using fast bridge scores, and we're only supposed to talk about the scores, only the data from what, so like strengths for my student, I could show that she's improved, but that would be pulling in data from like other
Yeah.
times she took the
Yeah.
test. Or
Yeah. So
okay,
what do
not
you feel like? What do you feel like are the strengths based on the norm reference data, the
just
fast
from
bridge?
just from the one time.
Hmm.
Okay, got it.
Yeah. From this assessment, we're not worried about informal what you saw there. We're worried about what you're seeing off of the norm referenced. Okay. To answer your question? Okay. Good deal. Someone else have one?
Yeah, so in the case of the student, like it's a student that I had last year.
Yeah.
Um, the issue isn't, I mean, it is math, but it isn't math. It's more like it's basically it's ADHD, so it's executive functioning. So would I be able to do a lesson on executive functioning? Or would it need to be a content
No,
lesson plan?
you could do it over executive functioning because that is impacting that student's performance on those math skills. And you determine based on your observation and looking at that it's his ADHD and executive functioning skills. Did that answer your question?
Yeah, it does.
Okay. Yeah. Any other ones before I switch my screen over to some things in the course shell to share with you?
Yeah. Can you just, I don't know, and if this has to wait till after class, it can. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Can, on the lesson plan, what parts then do we not need to do? Like, I can't wrap my head around how I'm making that less, giving you just what you're talking about without making it be like 4 or 5 pages long.
Well, basically, the template itself, Jared, is about 4 pages, right? We talked about that last week. Okay.
Yeah.
Each one of those areas that you fill in, all I need is 1 to 2 sentences on it. But
Okay.
I'll be glad to stay on with you after class, and I'll go over it with you and pull up a template. Okay. That sound good?
All right.
Okay. Any other questions before I move on? No, everyone good? Okay. I'm going to now want to go down and share with you Basically, the slide deck too that was for week 5 is the one that I covered last week, which I'm glad so I could spend a little more time breaking some things down here. So let me go down to, I mentioned a while ago the comprehensive report for those that are using the video. Okay. So here is identifying information. It gives you some of their background information, student name, their age, test date, grade level. Here's the background information from the home. So really this is where you will collect that and then drop it over into your report if you are using the video to meet the requirements of this assignment. Okay, I just want to make sure went over that quickly to show you. It breaks it down by home background, language development, sensory motor skills. Okay, you can kind of summarize and pull out some of the things there. Test section observations. This is how the student, their efforts toward that. So you pull out information for that, put it in your report. Then it gets into the rest of it's a narrative version of the results, and then all the statistical data will be the second half of the report. So I'm kind of scrolling through to remind you or show you where it was at. Also, recommendations and interventions. I included that. You could actually pull some of this off and utilize it if you are using the video. Made academic interventions, math, reading, and writing based on some of the students' scores. Okay. And then we get into all the statistical data. Okay. So if you're using this report, mainly one good reporting on that would be using standard score. You could talk about their standard score, and oral vocabulary was 102. So if you're using this, you can go through, you can see the weak areas was visualization, which I talked a little bit about that last week when I shared it with you. That was low, it says 72. So if you were using that bell curve template that I just mentioned a while ago, when you plotted that as one of your weak areas or areas of concern, that bar graph would be red down there. It's going to color code it for you. Okay, so that was one of the low areas. Here is a strength letter word identification. It was high average. It was a 113. I haven't pointed out 138, very high. It's very superior. His oral reading, I share with you, this student could read anything that you put in front of him. He could read it. His problem was going back and tell you what he read. Okay. So I just kind of I wanted to share that, show you where it was at, so you would know if you needed that to go along with the video. Okay. Sample report. I'm going to show you the sample report, an example of a bell curve. Again, this example I'm going to show you, they did not use my template for the bell curve. They had their own, and it was fine. Me down here to my resources. It's under sample report in SPED 805 resources folder.
Dr. Posey,
Yeah.
is was that was this folder filled today? Because I was on earlier today and
Was
that
it
folder
what? Was
I
the
was
folder what now?
was stuff recently put into that folder because I was on the Blackboard course shell today earlier and
Mm,
those folders were showing as empty.
No, it's been on there the whole semester. What section are you in? A,
Uh,
C, or D?
D, VD.
Okay. You might accidentally got turned off, but they've been in there since the first day of class.
I don't think it was there today. I can see if I can find it.
Okay, I'll go back and make sure it's turned on. So
Thank
it
you.
could accidentally, there's a little button, and if you accidentally even get your mouse on it, it'll turn it off. So
It's empty, Dr. Posey.
okay, all right. I'll go back. I'll make sure it's on when we get off here. Thank you for letting me know. Okay, here's the sample report identifying information. They told the dates, told the test, everything, just like you did before. paragraph. Okay. Background information. Told the students the pseudonym, the age. If they had identified disability. This one here, probably categorized OHI, it's an ADD. Okay. Told a little bit about what grade level they're in. Told a little bit about their actions at school, how they treat their peers, they're polite, they're respectful. Told a little bit about their background at home as well, background information. Okay. Test results and interpretation. You did this last week, talking about strengths, weaknesses, how they scored. Here is a bar graph showing how they scored. They identified some areas. This one was math fluency, calculation, and applied problems. You can see grade expectancy and current grade level. Okay, figure 1, and they give an explanation. They go on and explain standard scores as part of how they scored. Here is their example of a bell curve. This was before I had the tool available, the Google tool. They came in, you can see they drew part of this using Word, some Word tools, and in this here they did on their own. They showed the mean, 100 in the middle. They showed the student scores, 89, 91, 101. Okay. Those were the areas that they identified for that student. This particular student maybe is fairly good student overall, and they just used those areas, felt like it was something the student could work on. Okay, here's the explanation. Bell curve showing the average score 100, okay, which is the mean. Standard deviations of 15. And they explain where the student scored. 89% represents a scoring calculation, 91 in fluency, 101 in applied problems. So 89th percentile. Scored better as well, if not better than 89% of the students that took the test in the norm group. Okay? That's what it's going to look like, your bell curve, when you're comparing them. Summary and conclusion section talks a bit about his diagnosis with ADD, able to stay focused, perform well, and just kind of ties everything together on his performance in the test and his overall scores. Recommendation, gives some recommendation on things that this student can work on to get a better understanding of math fluency skills, ways that they can get some help to help remediate them and close that skill gap. Okay. Attached parent permission form. That was it on that I uploaded. Okay. So that example is in the course shell. Any questions on that? 805. If you're in section BD after this, I will go and make sure this material is in there and visible for you. I'm going to exit out of that. I'm still in the 805 resources folder. We go back up to my norm reference, my bell curve. Right above the sample reports folder is the bell curve tool. This is editable for you to use. Okay. You literally can go in here and take these off. You can see I'm doing it right now, live on there. I'm taking them off. I'm going to take all those off. And Kim, use the whisk. You would put the 2 or 3 subtests or scores, and it will plot it out there in a color-coded bar graph for you that will line up with the bell curve up here. Okay. Then you can go up on it, and you can export it as a PDF, download it on your desktop, and then copy and paste it, drop it right into your report. Okay. This may be a deal you want to save on your desktop and use later on if you need it for something in your classroom. Okay. Anything I mentioned a while ago, there was a question on there. I was talking about the color coded. So basically, anything below 70 is red, 70 up to about 85 is yellow, 85 and above is green. Color code. All right. Any questions on where to find those resources for your report? Everyone feel good about it up to this point as far as the actual, just the report itself? Feel confident and good? Okay. All right. Let me, out of that, uh-oh. There was one other thing I wanted to show you. Blackboard closed on me, so I can open it back up. Is there any questions, anything we need to go over to help you as you prepare to finalize that report and get it turned in? No? Everyone good? So basically just remember on normed, it's academic achievement. It's a way to measure it. We compare it against a large group. A lot of times we're using that for eligibility decisions. And it compares the student against his or her peers and how they perform at their age and grade level. Now, I want to move in real quick, switch gears, talk to you a few minutes about CBMs, just so you can start thinking about it. Okay? I'm just going to spend about 5 minutes. I'll jump into it deeper next week. But I just kind of want to get you to start thinking about it. Basically, a CBM, we call it a probe instead of a test when we're talking about CBM. Probe is the same thing as an assessment. And it is basically reflective upon what they are currently studying in the curriculum. And it's a way to assess. We're going to use the probe multiple times to see how consistent it is. And when we do the CBM, we would like for you to have a minimum of 4 data points up to 6 if possible, but we would like to see a minimum of 4. So that means you have to administer the probe 4 different times to collect your data points. Okay. A resource to help you if you think, man, I don't know what I'm going to do. I know what content level I want to do it on, but I don't really know how to create a probe or where to find one. I'm going to give you a resource and it will create the probes for you. You can literally click on grade level. You can click on the subject and skill, and then it will generate the probe for you. Okay. It's a free resource. It's called easycbm.com. EASYCBM.com. Okay. It's free. You can go on there, literally click on the grade level. Kevin, if you're wanting to do it on 4th grade math and a specific area, you can go in there and narrow it down and it will generate a probe for you. Okay. And you can use that. See, Allison uses it with one of her students and really likes it. So always, throw that out there. It's a great resource to use even after this class if you want to do some assessments with your students and do some data tracking with them. Okay. EasyCBM.com, you get it. So you narrow down, hey, do I want to look at reading? Do I want to look at math? Do I want to look at spelling, ELA, whatever it may be? It's totally up to you. Okay. Okay, Allison's also put in the chat. You can also go in there and put in your answers, and it keeps the data for you. So it's easy to go back and get that. So, again, it's a resource out there. Utilize it, guys. Make it easier for yourself. Use technology to help you out. Okay, so remember, basic CBM is a test that we use using the curriculum that they are currently studying in the classroom, just to kind of see how they're progressing to make sure we know that they are understanding what we're talking about instead of just assuming that they do and we just move on. In reality, they don't understand, and therefore the gap gets wider with their ability level. Okay, so I just kind of wanted to talk to you a few minutes about that. Do we only choose one for this assignment? One CBM? Yeah, you choose a CBM and you're going to administer that CBM 4 to 6 times to get your data points. Okay. Now, I'm going to throw out 3 terms that we're going to talk about starting next week. And this is when after we collect our data points and we start plotting those on a graph, it will give us an idea by using these 3 terms that I'm going to share with you. First one is baseline. We're going to determine, based on the data you collect, what that student's baseline is, and then go from there. So Kim may administer a probe on 5th grade math skills, and Johnny, the first 2 times he takes it, has a really low score. So she's just established his baseline, and she knows, hey, he's not scoring well. I need to drop this back. And then once you drop it back a grade level or make your adjustment, then you'll administer the rest of them. Okay, so we have our baseline. After you administer and establish that baseline, if you're giving your probes and you see a score jump up, then your next 2, you see drops. That's where we would put in what we call an intervention line on that graph that shows that you had to stop, do some intervention before you administered the rest of the probes. Okay. It's just a way to depict or show that as an instructor, you had to stop, do an intervention before you proceeded forward. And anybody else that comes in after that and looks, they can see it and say, hey, I see where Kim did an intervention right here before she went any further because the student is struggling. So we have baseline, intervention line, and the last one is the aim line. And that's the aim line is what we are projecting how that student will perform, and we're going to indicate that on our graph when we plot those data points. Okay, and I will show you all that next week. I don't want to get too deep into it right now because you're trying to finish your norm reference, but I at least wanted you to think about what type of probe am I going to do, what subject area, content, and let you explore easycbm.com to try to find you a probe that you want to use. Just kind of explore that site. And then also, I wanted you to be aware of those 3 terms because we will use those in our tables, charts, and graphs when we plot the data. Okay, so think about those things moving forward. And remember, and I'll go over those again next week. Okay, after you finalize your norm reference. Any questions on kind of CBM, what that will entail? Again, that was just kind of the 3,000 feet viewpoint looking down on it, just kind of a broad overview. I'll jump into it deeper next week.
I just want to clarify just real quick. So on Easy CBM, if I have like my student that I'm using and I want to do reading and she's at like a 4th grade level, could I do reading 4.1, reading 4.2, 4.3, 4.4, right? And then use
Exactly.
those as
Yeah.
for my assignment.
Yep.
Okay.
That's correct. Any questions there on that or the assignment coming up that's due Sunday?
I have a question about the bell curve, and this might be a really obvious answer, but for my student scores, I have her scores and I have her percentiles, but I had to do everything by hand, so I don't have access to like others. Like I have the percentile, but I don't have other scores. Can I make my bell curve the percentiles?
Yeah.
Okay. That's what
Yeah.
I was hoping. Okay, thanks.
Just a way to visually represent when you're trying to compare how they did to their peers in the norm group.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions? No? All right. If not, I'm gonna let you guys go. Jared, I'll stay on if I can pull that lesson plan up and we can talk through that if you want. I'll stop the recording. Everyone else good? Okay. Thank you guys. Have a great 4th of July weekend. I'll see you back next week.
Have a nice holiday.
You too. Thank you.